Welcome back to Chapter 3, Measurable Organizational Value and the Business Case. This is part 2 of our lecture series. Let me go ahead and get to the slide that we left off on, and that is developing the MOV. So as we look to develop the MOV, we need to really identify very clearly what the value of the project is. Now understand, when we talk about projects, let's remember that these can be projects that we choose to do, or again, can be projects that have been chosen for us to do. Basically, what I mean by that is, if there's some sort of regulation, state, federal, industry regulation that we need to comply with in order to remain in business or not get, fined. So there's a lot of things that apply here, but the value is always that. Is it better? Is it faster? Is it cheaper? I used for those of us that remember Steve Austin, the astronaut, and him coming back and them creating a bionic man who would be, better, stronger, faster. That's what we're looking at here. So just a fun little reference. But we need to really define this clearly. Again, going back to the strategic plan, right? So the strategy, the verb, if you will, of the vision, mission, and values of an organization, we have to figure out how this plays in. How is that going to benefit the company to move forward with this? Now, I used a Workfront reference here. There's the reference to Workfront, great resources for, factors to create metrics that determine project success. So as we talk about this, we need to quantify what the value is. So if it's better, how is it better? How is it going to be measurable? Okay. So metrics are usually expressed by either money, it's going to increase revenue, decrease expenses, do something along that fact, or it's going to increase our customer base by 10%. It's going to reduce the cycles needed to process, say, an order, by 20%. Some sort of numeric value in the aspect of an increase or decrease. Okay, so again, it's about performance. So how are we going to do this? Is it going to decrease time? So we have more time. Is it going to increase revenue, decrease? You get the idea. And if not, look up more information. So developing the MOV, so, we've talked about, what is the value going to be, better, stronger, faster. We get into time frame, which is another way to look at this. The time frame of the project itself. So understand that the project manager's responsibility is to guide the process, while the project sponsor must identify and specify the metrics and the acceptable values for the metrics. Now, project managers, of course, have that experience. They have the training to do that work. So it could be that they end up doing that work, but at the end of the day, if you will, it is the project sponsors, okay, the stakeholders that need to really decide how the project's going to be measured, what those metrics are, what acceptable values for those metrics are. Now, understand that in projects that I've done, I learned to be very conservative. And what I mean by conservative is not to undersell the product, but make sure not to oversell what the project will deliver. So that's pretty key to, consider and be conservative, because we get really excited about a project, what it might do, and we don't want to oversell it, definitely. Okay, we're not talking about a used car here. We're talking about a project that in a lot of cases could potentially make or break a business. Okay, so keep that in mind depending on how much is being invested. Finally, we're going to summarize the MOV in a clear, concise statement. Here we are again. We're back to documentation, right? Statement or table, very clear as to who, what, where, when, how, and why. We don't need all of those in the statement, but we definitely need a lot of those within the statement that we prepare, okay? So, the project will be successful if, well, in the case and the example that we're using here, we know it's going to be successful if we land a man on the moon and return him to Earth within the decade, Another example, increase awareness of healthy living by having 250 new subscribers within the next 6 months. That's what we're going for. But again, now understand, we don't need to go into the detail necessarily of how we're going to measure it. That's another part of building the MOV statement. Okay, so notice here, July 20th, 1969, almost the end of the decade. That's one small step for, depending on who you ask, a man or man, one giant leap for mankind. So again, Kennedy's vision for the country as it pertained to space exploration was in fact met. So it was a great goal that was met. If you believe that we put a man on the moon, we don't need to go into that. So examples of MOV statements. So it depends on what the impact is. So here's some examples that I've come up with. I don't need to read these to you, so what I would encourage you to do is go ahead and pause this slide. Okay, I will just give an example. So let's look at the operational or social. So by implementing product description videos on the top 10% of products that are returned, we will reduce product returns by 30% for those items within 12 months. So we could potentially notice how a lot of these could go under customer impact, could go under strategic, could go under financial. They don't necessarily have to be targeted on one area, okay? Just like it doesn't have to just be better, just be faster. It can be a lot of things, okay? And you'll see that in later on in this presentation when we look at how we document this. So from a sort of table format, if we look at this from a time period standpoint, if you notice I've got examples of multiple MOVs based on time. If you notice this isn't, I've forgot the word, it's not equal, I'll just use the word equal, and that in 1 month 500, which means technically in 6 months we'd be looking at 3,000. But I was realistic in saying, okay, whatever it is that we're going to do, whatever project we're going to do, linear. Thank you. It's not going to remain linear. So in this case, this might be a marketing project that we do over the next 2 years. Its value is going to fall off. We're not going to get as many. So if you notice, it just works through that project. But there's an example of time. So summarizing the process of developing the MOV. So what is the impact? Again, my example is financial, the value increase ratio for prospect to customer. So what I'm talking about here is we're going to turn a customer into a prospect. Whatever project we're doing, that's going to be the end result. It's going to increase first-time customer revenue by 50%. So consequently, we're looking to convert prospects to customers at a rate that will increase revenue by 5%. First-time customer, new customer revenue. Okay, there's an aggressive timeline of next 90 days, and how we'll verify that is we'll audit the first-time customer revenue compared to the previous 90 days. So as we do this project over 90 days, we're going to look at the previous 90 days and see how that plays. And then we would summarize that into a complete MOV statement. So the example I give you here, by leveraging a new customer relationship management workflow, so that tells you sort of about the project, and automation process, we will experience a 5% increase in revenue over the next 90 days as compared to new customer revenue for the previous 90 days. So if you notice, I've covered all of the specific steps in creating and increasing value of an MOV. I should have taken off healthy living. This has nothing to do with healthy living. So let's go ahead and continue. The business case. So now that we have the MOV, part of the whole thing, the MOV, is that first part in identifying what the value of the project is. We want to move forward. What's the business case for the project? So why are we going to do this? How is it going to benefit the business? Okay, so a business case is an analysis of an organizational value, feasibility, cost, benefit, risks of several proposed alternatives or options. So we now are going to basically bring forth a document that is going to suggest the project we want to do, provide alternatives to the project we want to do, and clearly document the value of the MOV as well as the value of the project. It's definitely going to cover the who, what, where, when, how, and why. So as you look at a business case, you want to make sure that you cover those elements, okay? Why are we doing the project? Who's going to be involved in the project? Who is going to be impacted positively by the project, etc.? What are the costs? What are the benefits? What's the time? What are the risks? We definitely always want to be looking at the risks. And remember, as I've stated a couple times, each time we get together as a team, the question needs to be asked, is today the day we stop the project? Have the risks become too high for us to move forward? Has the progress become too, not enough for us to move forward? Has the cost exceeded what we expected at this point in the project? And do we see that exponentially growing, thus the project's value completely gets lost in the cost or the additional time? Cost of additional time, cost of tangible costs, right? What we're putting out to do the project. So attributes of good case: thorough in detailing all possible impacts, costs, benefits, clear and logical in comparing the cost benefit impact. We'll look at that more. Objective through including all pertinent information. Now, of course, can we ever get all of the information? No. And the fact is, we have to be careful. I want to really focus on this, of analysis paralysis, okay? This is where we spend so much time planning that we never even get to execute, okay? Now, one thing I heard when I was younger, one of my managers once said, Eric, sometimes just moving forward with a decision, right or wrong, is better than getting stuck in analysis paralysis, okay? So we eventually just have to, cut the cable, see what happens, make a decision, and move forward. Okay, there's always the opportunity. That's a real challenge I find today for a lot of people because of this fear of failure. But the fact is, if we're not comfortable with failure, we never get to where we want to be. Okay, we never risk. And so I want to encourage you. Sometimes it's a matter of fact of just making a decision and just moving forward so that we don't spend time. Now, I realize this may be contradictory to in chapter 1. I said plan, 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 spend a lot of time planning. But here, when we get down to it, once we reach that threshold of, we've provided enough data to support the business case, to move forward, be done with it. There may be other advantages, but as long as we've covered it in detail, we don't need to cover everything. So as we talk about developing a business case, this is sort of a step 1. So we've defined, we've looked at the measurable organizational value of the project that we're going to do. We've got those metrics in place. We have a means of providing data to support the project, and that's key, okay? So form a cross-functional business case team. So that team, when we talk about cross-functional, is people within the department that the project's being done, executives, experts in the technology that we're going to use, as well as maybe consultants who have an expertise in the project that we're doing, okay? So we have to put this whole team together, making sure, again, to include whatever the end user is as we focus on IT. But if we're talking about a project that isn't IT, but is a business process project, we're going to change a bunch of business processes that are done within our organization. The best person to ask how to do a job better is the person that's doing it right now. So keep that in mind. Advantages: credibility, alignment with organizational goals. So again, what's the current mission? How is this going to align with that? Access the real costs, ownership, agreement, bridge building. Bridge building from the aspect of working with others, getting them to support the project, you support the project, so that we don't end up with what's called silos, okay, where everybody's going at their own path to meet whatever their immediate goal from the project is, but not looking over the horizon as to what the organizational goals are. What's the organization's strategy for implementing those goals? You know, how does this relate to the current strategic plan, if you will? So identify alternatives. So, you know, we can't go down one path without realizing there's other paths that we could have chosen, okay? And in doing this correctly, we need to present to the stakeholders other opportunities besides the one that we picked. All right, so I'm going to talk about this more in the next video. That's enough for this one. Take care.